Welcome back to another EV comparison, but this time it's a little bit different.
A little special even. We have the Taycan 4S and the e-tron GT. Super fast, super powerful EVs for a quick drive to Cyberjaya, where in between we'll be talking about the exterior, the interior, and of course the driving experience of both cars.
The e-tron GT with the dynamic package costs 680,000 ringgit, while the Taycan 4S with the Performance Battery Plus costs 676,000 ringgit. Both are dual motor all-wheel drive EVs. Both EVs have an 800-volt architecture and they come from the same group of companies.
So they're essentially the same cars underneath, built on the same platform, but do they feel the same? Are they any different?
This video is brought to you by Gentari, and your range anxiety today with over 300 Gentari charging points nationwide. Firstly, let's get the EV numbers out of the way. So both the e-tron GT and the Taycan 4S with the Performance Battery Plus have the same 93 kWh battery pack. The range is reportedly 501 km for the e-tron GT and 505 km for the Taycan. Both cars have an 800-volt architecture and both of them can handle 270 kilowatts DC fast charging. So charging to 80% takes less than 30 minutes for both cars, and they can also do 22 kilowatt AC charging, and that takes about 5 hours to fully charge both cars.
As with all expensive cars, let's talk about the most important thing, their looks.
It's easy to turn heads with both of these cars. Sure, they are electric sedans, but they look like supercars.
Yeah, we've done EV comparisons before, but EV supercars, this must be another first. I've spent time in both cars, but much more in the Taycan, and I dare say, as a high-performance electric driver's car, this is probably the best out there yet. But we now have the Audi e-tron GT in Malaysia, and I think it's a genuine challenger. Arif should have some strong opinions on that.
If this was a competition of which car stood out more, well, the clear winner is the Audi e-tron. The design lines are just much more interesting, the car has a lot more flair to it, and well, the grille is just in your face. This car is a movie star too. This is Iron Man's car. Tony Stark, mate.
I guess it's nice to drive a car that people recognize. I think the e-tron GT looks great and definitely more striking than the Taycan. Parked next to the e-tron, I think some might even say the Taycan may look a little plain, but I think there's still an appeal to it. As for the Taycan, I think the frozen berry colour looks really unique. Paired with those 20-inch, 12,000 ringgit aero wheels, it just looks the part of an EV. I can appreciate the clean lines and softer features of the Taycan. There's no doubt that the e-tron GT has more wow factor, but I think some would say that this looks easier on the eye.
I guess when you don't have much to show, there's not much to point out either, eh?
That's what we call foresight, thinking ahead. I think with the elegance of the Taycan, not only will it look timeless, but it can suit both a young owner and also an older one. I'm not so sure if you can say the same about the e-tron GT, but then again, it's very subjective.
Well, I would agree with Eugene that the Porsche is more timeless and a bit more elegant, but if something dramatic is what you're looking for, it's gotta be the Audi e-tron.
I think it's hard to go wrong with the Taycan's clean design. It's hard to point out anywhere that looks odd. It's also very practical, with decent boot space and a deep frunk.
While I can also appreciate the clean lines of the Taycan, the e-tron is just more dramatic with its in-your-face grille and butterfly-like tail lights. For the Porsche, the designers had to make it instantly recognizable as a Porsche, and you can see the resemblance to both the 911 and the Panamera. They've really nailed the proportions right with the Taycan, considering the fact that most EVs look like raised versions of petrol cars. Audi calls the e-tron GT's design a combination of extreme aesthetics and very good functionality. I'm not quite sure about the functionality part, but it is no doubt extreme, even more extreme than the Taycan with the trailing lights and prominent body lines.
The aesthetic differences between both cars doesn't stop with the exterior. They're both quite different on the inside as well.
I'm just going to start out with something that bothers me in here. The wireless mobile phone charger in the e-tron is pretty much useless. It is in the center armrest storage box. There's a clip for it, but good luck getting your phone in there.
Mine is no different. You still have to lift up the armrest cover and tuck it in. But honestly, after driving from Bangkok to Singapore in less than 30 hours in the Taycan record run, you really can't fault this interior. Although that's in the Cross Turismo, but it's essentially the same interior design. It's typical functional Porsche, just enough storage, very practical, discreet but stylish, with a responsive, quite user-friendly infotainment system. The one thing I find quite inconvenient are these electronically controlled aircon flaps. Not the best idea by Porsche, if I'm honest.
The next thing that bothers me here is the media control for the head unit. It's usable, it's practical, but it just looks like a knockoff iPod from the early 2000s.
I think if you spec another screen for the front passenger, it's cool, but too many. After prolonged use or after a long run, at the end of it, they all look like ATM screens. So much fingerprints. Also quite typical of a Porsche, I think the interior is a bit monochrome. Nothing wrong with that, I like it. But I think some buyers might want a little vibrancy from an electric Porsche supercar. In terms of standing out, I think the e-tron GT does it a little better.
Complaints aside, I do love the interior of the Audi e-tron. In fact, I much prefer it over the Porsche Taycan. It's still very intuitive in here. There's a healthy amount of physical buttons as well. The cabin of the Audi e-tron has also not succumbed to the screen invasion which we see in most modern cars today. Sure, there are two screens in here, but they're not too large, not too in your face, and most of your basic controls can still be done with the physical buttons which allow you to keep your eyes on the road.
I never hide the fact that I love Porsche, so when I got into this car for the first time and I saw these three round dials in front of me, I smiled. This is Porsche heritage right here, but in an EV. Also very typical Porsche, even in an EV, is how driver-focused the sitting position feels. Just spot on. Like other Porsches, in this one, it's really easy to get used to where everything is.
Charging your EV has never been easier thanks to the exciting EV roaming collaboration between Gentari, JomCharge and Charge EV. With over 700 charging stations nationwide, EV drivers can now enjoy the convenience of accessing, activating and paying for charging sessions from any partnered platforms. So wherever your journey takes you, you can always rely on Gentari's wide network of chargers.
Man, I've been very lucky to drive various different Porsches over the years and they all seem to share one characteristic. They're very easy and very quick to get used to. And this, even with its insane performance, is no different. Aside from the blinding straight line speed, the grip and traction that you get from the all-wheel drive and rear-wheel steer system is just insane. Your brain is not prepared for how this car sticks onto the ground. It's like a bullet train around corners. The Porsche definitely feels more performance-oriented, more eager and aggressive when you're driving hard. The e-tron is every bit as quick, but with a touch more refinement and a quieter cabin.
I agree with Eugene that the Porsche feels more performance-oriented despite both of these cars sharing very similar drivetrain layouts. Now, the reason why you buy cars like these two cars is because you actually quite enjoy driving. Within the price range of both of these cars is the Mercedes-Benz EQS, but the EQS is not going to be able to drive like these cars. Sure, the Taycan and the e-tron both weigh over 2 tons, but they don't feel like it. They're nimble and the grip is phenomenal. All I can say is that, well, if this is the future of sports cars, I can kind of live with it. Refinement? Well, I'm super relaxed in here. This is a proper GT car. Sure, it sits low and the tires are considerably low profile, but the ride, superb. I've done long trips in this car and every time I reach my destination, I feel fresh. You're not too isolated in the cabin of the e-tron as well, so that's great. It keeps you alert.
I think the rear wheel steer system is a real game changer. Not only does it make the car feel small and nimble around tight bends, but it also makes driving in town a lot easier, despite the car being quite large.
It's a tough thing transitioning to EVs for the average petrol head. Now, this is an interesting point that has been somewhat brought up in a conversation between Gordon Murray, Martin Rimac, Mr. Hennessy, and Mr. Koenigsegg, and you can watch this video somewhere on YouTube. And the fact is that all of us will kind of reminisce all the things that are ICE-like. In that conversation, it was also brought up that one day there will be a generation of drivers who will have absolutely no memory of petrol cars. So then you won't be complaining of the lack of ICE-like behavior. But that time hasn't come yet. So all of us here right now, well, if you're yearning for an ICE-like EV, I'm gonna say the e-tron is perhaps one of the most ICE-like EVs you can buy out there. The e-tron GT comes with its own fake sounds, which actually don't sound too bad. Now this sound that it makes actually sounds like a jet engine, and there's a pretty good reason why. So Audi engineers have combined several sound elements, and one of them is a plastic tube with a fan taped at the end of it. So it's as if you are sitting inside of a jet engine. It's a bit of a surreal experience if you ask me. And I think that, you know what, among the fake EV sounds that I've heard, it's one of the better ones that you can find out there. I'm not quite sure what kind of sounds the Taycan is making.
I think the futuristic driving sounds can be a bit disorientating after a while. If you ask me, I prefer fake engine noises. Better yet, give me various Porsche sounds. One from a Carrera GT, one from a 918, from a GT3 RS.
As mentioned earlier, both cars have the same 93 kWh battery pack. Range is just a bit over 500 kilometers, and by today's standards, that is a lot.
This particular Taycan has the larger optional 93 kWh battery, but if you plan it right, you can take this long distance even if you stick with the standard 73 kWh unit. I recently drove 1,800 kilometers under 29 hours from Bangkok to Singapore in a Cross Turismo. That car, like this, had the larger 93 kWh battery, so we drove easily 300 kilometers between charging stops without worrying about the battery.
The thing about EVs like both of these cars, performance-oriented EVs, is that you will be driving them fast most of the time. So there's a low chance that you will be getting that quoted WLTP range. But it's not a problem though. I've been driving this car considerably fast. I have done morning runs, and I still have plenty of range to run daily errands after that. The good thing about the Audi e-tron is that it actually comes with 22 kilowatt AC charging. And this is quite important since you will be doing home charging or charging at your office most of the time. Anyway, sure, it's not as fast as DC charging, but this is the majority of charging that you will be doing. So with 22 kilowatt AC charging takes 5 hours for this big 93 kilowatt hour battery pack. Plug it in for an hour or two, you will get plenty of range recovered.
With EVs, if you're constantly hammering the throttle, especially on the highway, expect the battery to deplete very quickly, regardless of how big it is. That's just how EVs are. I think if you're going to get a Taycan for driving and to carry the occasional passenger, get the sedan. But if you're going to get the Taycan as a family car for long distance trips, get the Cross Turismo. You get more leg room at the back and a larger boot. I spent hours sleeping in the back seat of the Cross Turismo. No complaints at all. Solid outstation EV. If you're gonna get a Taycan for driving, get the sedan. But if you're gonna get a Taycan for driving and carrying people a little more often, get the Cross Turismo.
Well, you'll be turning heads with both cars anyway, but this car will be turning more hits. It's also a more relaxed and refined driving experience, if you ask me.
For more information on the Porsche Taycan 4S or the Audi e-tron GT, do log on to AutoBuzz.my.
If you like this video, do give it a like, share and subscribe. Also remember to turn on notifications. If you didn't, please let us know why. This video is brought to you by Gentari and your range anxiety today with over 300 Gentari charging points nationwide.